April 10th, 1940. 0430 hours. Off at Fjord, deep inside Arctic Norway. Heavy snow falling in the dark before dawn. 5 British destroyers, HMS Hardy, Hunter, Havoc, Hotspur and Hostile, creep up a narrow fjord toward the port of Narvik, where 10 German destroyers sit at anchor after landing an invasion force the day before. Each German ship outweighs its British counterpart, carries a heavier gun battery, and outnumbers the attacking force 2 to 1. Captain Bernard Warburton-Lee has no reinforcements coming, no air support, and orders from the Admiralty that leave the final decision to attack entirely in his hands. He signals his flotilla just before first light. I am steering for the entrance of Narvik harbour. In the next few hours, this outnumbered force will sink 2 German destroyers, cripple 2 more, destroy an ammunition ship that turns the retreat into a fireball, and then fight its way back out through 3 fresh German destroyers waiting in ambush at the cost of Warburton-Lee's own life and 2 of his 5 ships. This is the story of the first naval action of the Norwegian campaign, and the destroyer captain who attacked a force twice his size because nobody else was going to. The problem at Narvik had begun the previous morning when 10 German destroyers under Commodore Friedrich Bondt forced their way past Norwegian coastal defences and landed a full regiment of German mountain troops to seize the port, one of the most strategically vital targets in the entire invasion of Norway. Narvik supplied roughly half of Germany's iron ore imports via a railway running to the port from Sweden, or that fed Germany's entire wartime steel production, and holding the port secured Hitler's most critical raw material supply line for the rest of the war. The German destroyers that delivered the invasion force were now anchored in Narvik's harbour and the surrounding fjords, refuelling after a rough Arctic crossing, when the Admiralty ordered Warburton-Lee's 2nd destroyer flotilla north to prevent exactly this kind of landing. He arrived roughly a day too late to stop the landing itself, but with the German destroyers still sitting at anchor and vulnerable, he now had one narrow window to hit them before they could disperse or reinforce. The numbers made the attack look reckless by any conventional standard. 10 German destroyers, each displacing over 3,000 tons and carrying 5 5-inch guns, sat at Narvik against 5 British H-class destroyers, the largest of which, Warburton-Lee's own flagship, Hardy, displaced barely 2,000 tons and carried 4 or 5 4.7-inch guns. Even accounting for the element of surprise, a straight gun-for-gun engagement between these 2 forces favoured the Germans decisively. A naval doctrine of the period generally counselled against attacking a numerically and materially superior force in its own defended harbour without overwhelming advantage elsewhere, to offset the mismatch. Warburton-Lee had no such advantage. What he had instead was total darkness, heavy falling snow, and a German picket ship that had, through a communication failure on the German side, left its patrol position at the fjord's entrance entirely unmanned on the morning of the attack. Warburton-Lee's plan depended entirely on using the fjord's geography and the weather against ships that badly outgunned his own. Approaching at dawn high water, timed deliberately, both for the cover of first light and to reduce the risk of striking any mines laid in the channel, his 5 destroyers slipped past the unguarded picket position and into Narvik harbour, essentially undetected, achieving the one advantage that could offset being outnumbered 2 to 1. A completely surprised enemy, still at anchor, boilers cold, crews unprepared for action, unable to manoeuvre or return fire in the critical first minutes when Hardy's torpedoes found their mark. If you're finding this dive into the Norwegian campaign interesting, subscribing helps the channel keep telling these stories. Hardy's opening torpedo salvo struck the German flagship Wilhelm Heidkamp directly, detonating her magazine and killing Commodore Bonte, along with most of her explosion. The British destroyers pressed the attack through the harbour, torpedoing and sinking a second German destroyer, the Anton Schmidt, while gunfire from the flotilla heavily damaged the Dieter von Roeder and inflicted lighter damage on two more German ships, still struggling to get underway and return fire in the chaos and continuing snowfall. With the harbour in flames and no landing force of their own aboard to hold the port, Warburton-Lee's ships turned to withdraw, and on the way out encountered the German ammunition ship Rauenfels, attempting to reach Narvik. HMS Havoc opened fire on her, and the resulting explosion, when her cargo detonated, lit the fjord with a fireball visible for miles, destroying the one ship that could have resupplied the German destroyers' badly depleted ammunition. The withdrawal turned into the battle's second and far costlier phase. 3 fresh German destroyers, Wolfgang Zenker, Erich Kölner, and Erich Giese, emerged from a side fjord where they had been sheltering, followed shortly by 2 more, Georg Thiele and Bernd von Arnim, catching Warburton-Lee's flotilla in a running fight as it tried to reach open water. A shell struck Hardy's bridge directly, mortally wounding Warburton-Lee, who reportedly continued issuing orders to fight on even as he lay dying. A hit to Hardy's boiler room forced her captain to beach the ship rather than lose her outright, and HMS Hunter, disabled by gunfire and struck by a following ship in the confusion of the melee, capsized and sank. Of the 5 British destroyers that had entered the fjord that morning, only 3 made it back out to open water, badly damaged but afloat. The tactical ledger read as a draw on paper. 2 German destroyers, sunk against 2 British destroyers lost, with several more ships damaged on both sides. But the strategic result tilted heavily in Britain's favour. The surviving German destroyers, their fuel and ammunition already critically low before the battle, and now stripped of the supply ship that might have replenished them, were effectively trapped in the fjord with nowhere to go and nothing left to fight with. 3 days later, the battleship HMS Warspite arrived with 9 additional destroyers to finish the job in the Second Battle of Narvik, destroying every remaining German destroyer in the fjord without loss, an outcome made possible largely because Warburton-Lee's outnumbered flotilla had already gutted the German forces' supplies and cohesion days earlier. Warburton-Lee was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, the first of the Second World War, for an attack the Admiralty's own orders had left entirely to his judgment to make or decline. 5 British destroyers were never supposed to beat 10 German ones sitting in their own defended harbour. What made the difference wasn't superior firepower, since the British had none, but a captain willing to trade the advantage of numbers for the advantage of surprise, striking in the dark and the snow at the one moment his enemy's ships were least ready to fight back. Warburton-Lee did not survive the battle he started, but by the time Warspite arrived to finish it 3 days later, there was almost nothing left of the German flotilla for her to fight.